Hello, I'm Irma Baker. Welcome to our show. We're sponsored by RSVP, the Retired Senior Volunteer Program, which is a part of Mature Services. Well, our guest today is going to take us back in time, and we'll meet him right after this message from Mature Services.
RSVP of Summit County has been making a difference in our community since 1972. RSVP volunteers are increasing the quality of life by participating in programs and organizations that provide important services to the community. RSVP matches personal interests and skills with opportunities to serve. If you're interested in adding more meaning to your life and improving the lives of others, please call 330-253-4597, extension 166.
Welcome back. Our guest today is Mark Ludwig, and he is a naturalist with the Medina County Park District. And what we're celebrating right now is 50 years for the Park District. Mark, it's wonderful to have you with us.
Thank you for inviting me back.
Yes, we've had you on several times, and it's always such a different program.
Yep. This program today actually is talking about our exhibit, Blast from the Past. That'll be starting December 12th, but it'll be up till January 10th. And basically it's a timeline of the history of our park back to 1965. And, but it's also not only the history of the park, but kind of what was going on during that time, the pop culture, you know, from movies to music, just toys, which I have a lot of toys on the table today. But it's basically as you come into our Wolf Creek Environmental Center, Visitor Center, you're going to be playing a game. And you're going to be rolling dice, and it'll tell you how many spaces to move throughout the building. But you'll start at 1965, and you'll be rolling the dice and going through the different time periods. Not only, like I said, learning about our park, but also learning about the kind of the pop culture of the time. So,
well, give us just a little background on the history of the park.
Sure. It started. I have a few photos that I brought to show everybody. But basically, on April 19th, 1965, over 60 people gathered before the Medina County Probate Court Judge, W. Garver, to support the creation of the Medina County Park District. So it was 1965 that it was created. And basically, we're going to talk about, and we really didn't have an official park until 1972, which you're going to see a couple of pictures from Greenleaf Park, which was our first park in 1972, so years later. And you'll see they had many different programs out there, serving soup, I would guess, or maybe chili, I'm not sure. But we also had our fishing derby. Actually, this was in the 70s. 1978 was our first fishing derby. But this is all Greenleaf Park, including this a nature hike. So one of the first hikes that we had, hiking series, I guess. This is later in the 70s at Greenleaf Park as well. Because in 1972, basically Greenleaf Park, like I said, was our first park, and then not until 1976 actually was our second park, Leaf House Park. Greenleaf was actually an abandoned gravel pit. So one of the exhibits when you're walking through the timeline at Wolf Creek, we're going to have like a little gravel activity where we're going to have like Tonka trucks and, you know, Tonka, the backhoes and stuff like that, where kids can actually build, you know, gravel mounds and things like that. So we're going to make it fun for everybody, kids and adults alike. So.
Well, what's this picture of the big tree? The
big tree actually was at Princess Ledges Park in Brunswick. That was probably late 70s, I would think. So the tree we're thinking is no longer there, but but yeah, it was definitely one of the bigger trees. But so essentially, when you walk in, you'll learn about the creation of the Park District in 1965. You'll learn about the 60s, so the late 60s, the clothes, you know, during that time period. We'll have some clothes, you know, from the late 60s. We also have like a food price game that we're coming up with. So you'll match, you know, the prices of today with the prices back in the late 60s. And it's going to be interesting. You know, something that costs back then 10 cents will probably cost, you know, $10 today or something like that.
Well, you've brought a lot of items.
A lot of items,
are
yep.
these items actually items from the exhibit?
These will be, most of these will be in the exhibit, so you can come there and see the all these different toys and props and things like that. This right here actually is the older Barbie furniture. This is a newer Barbie right here from probably the 2000s. but the furniture is actually from the late 60s, mid 60s. And the cool thing about it, it was cardboard. So nowadays everything's plastic. And the top actually opens up on this, which is kind of neat to see for a little turntable inside.
Oh, and I'll bet some of our viewers are saying, I had the real thing just like that back in that time.
Yeah, and I think unfortunately a lot of the cardboard, didn't hold up over the years. So, but it is kind of neat to see just how things have changed. And then as you go through the building, you'll go into the 1970s. Like we talked about our first park, Greenleaf Park, in 1972. Our fishing derby, we're actually going to have probably like a little fishing activity where kids will, catch a little fish on Velcro or something like that. And so we'll have somebody dressed up like a fisherman. So, but then also the 70s clothing, we'll talk about. One of the things we're thinking of is having maybe like a cutout that people, this is kind of still a work in progress, so we're still thinking ideas, but we're thinking of having like maybe a cutout of, like a person and have clothing on it, and they stand behind it, to take a picture with, clothes from the 70s. Also, we're thinking like hairstyles, like through the years. The hairstyle would be like on a stick or something they would hold up over their head, and so fun things like that.
It's going to be a very interactive exhibit.
Yep, very interactive, yep. Not only the game that you'll be playing as you roll the dice and kind of move around the building, but we'll have many different activities, different sections of the building. So some of the other things in the 70s, we'll talk about the pet rock, which I didn't bring one today, but everybody's probably seen rock before. But that was kind of neat in 1975. You had everybody, all the kids had to have a pet rock, which and the guy made millions.
Made millions. So,
yeah.
Just on the fact that you didn't have to walk it, you
right.
didn't have to clean up after it, you didn't have to feed it. It was a big sales,
big sales
item there.
So it was pretty funny. But I guess the whole thing about it was the little courier, that's really sold the rock and stuff. And of course, disco, we're going to talk about in the 70s. So, and then they'll move to another room. And then we'll start the 1980s. In our park district, we had...
well, let's back up
sure.
a minute. You said you moved to another room. Do you mean that you actually have a number of rooms
Yes.
that are devoted to this exhibit?
Kind of each room, a main room that we have at Wolf Creek, will be like a different time period. So as you go through the different rooms, you'll go through the different time periods. Of course, starting with 1965, moving on to the present day. So... as you go into another room in our building, it'll be the 1980s. We'll talk about our Plum Creek Park that opened up in Brunswick, and which actually was an old landfill. We also had Hubbard Valley Park, which opened in 1981. And what's kind of neat about this is they had a fill the lake contest. So people sent in their idea of how fast this big lake was filled, and it took about a month and a half, I guess. Person that won it or whatever, but it took about a month and a half to fill this big lake we have at that park.
Well, considering what you're talking about there, it sounds like the Park District has always been focused on the environment.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no question about it. That's certainly our big mission in our park, is to protect the habitats and the environment. For not only the animals, but obviously for people to go out and enjoy, the park as well.
Well, also with reclaiming the land,
Yep.
because you said one was on a landfill and another one was on an old unused gravel pit. So you're really taking land that had been wasteland and turning it into parkland.
Correct. Yep. Yeah, which is really neat. We'll have a new park opening soon, Kilbuck Lakes, which actually is an old quarry. So that'll be opening here shortly. So yes, a lot of the land is reclaimed and opened into a wonderful park. So.
Well, take us through some more of the
Sure.
things.
Yeah.
That you
So
brought.
back in the 80s, we had, of course, lots of actually our first levee passed in 1989, which is kind of interesting about the park history. We also had our Friends of the Park organization established during that time. But in the 80s, starting in the early 80s, when you think of the 80s, you think of course, music and movies. Were a big thing back then. So I brought probably one of my favorite. Actually, this was probably late 70s. Actually,
Rocky,
the Rocky series.
Rocky.
But there was Rocky, one, of course, all the series of Rocky movies, but that was definitely a neat movie of the 80s. Music, obviously, I can talk the whole segment about music.
Well, you've got
but,
actually a kind of a continuum of music here. I'm seeing vinyl, which was, of course, going back to, what, the 60s, 50s?
Yep, and actually, some of along the way, and this is kind of hard to fit into like certain time periods, but we'll start with like, vinyl. Of course, Elvis Presley is pretty popular. But vinyl started, and then what they called the 8-track tape. So a lot of, I have it the right way. No, wrong way. and that was big, obviously in the 70s. And
I would imagine some of our viewers, I know I have at home an old 8-track player and old 8-track tapes. I wouldn't dare play them now because I'm sure they've dried out so much, but they're still hanging around.
Yeah, and the funny thing about the, nowadays with the CDs and the MP3s, you can skip to a song and whatever your favorite song. The 8-track, of course, you had to let run through the whole, the whole album. So, but then obviously the cassettes came along in the 80s, and then CDs, late 80s, I guess, they started to come out, and digital technology. And then, of course, I didn't bring my iPod, but of course that was big later on. But the amazing thing is that now we're kind of back to vinyl. So, so we went full circle.
I'm hearing that there is some feeling that you get actually better sound from vinyl. It
is, in my opinion, I love CDs because they're easy to take to your car or put in a CD player, easy to transport. But the analog sound of vinyl is just incredible. It's like you're actually there, listening to the live band or whatever. Even tapes actually have a really good sound to it. But yeah, it's funny that all these years we're going back to vinyl, and it's kind of a big thing right now. As well as tapes are coming back too, cassette tapes. So
are they really? Now that I haven't heard, the cassette tapes were coming back. That is kind of the newest
thing right now. So a lot of music groups are putting out the cassette tapes and stuff. But yeah, that analog sound is definitely is hard to beat. So
and when you think how cheap you can pick up vinyl today by going to the Salvation Army store, the Goodwill store. They have bins of vinyl.
And it sounds just as good as when they printed it back then. So also the big thing during the 80s, actually late 70s also. It's hard to sometimes break these apart into different decades, but one of the things for me as a kid was certainly Star Wars. That was my whole life as a kid. So I have a lot of toys. I actually, like, half of my basement is filled with Star Wars stuff. But I just brought a couple of things to show you today. Of course, the toys
Otherwise,
from the 80s.
we would have had to go to your basement.
Oh yeah, we wouldn't have room to if I brought everything today. So, but yeah, early 80s, you had, of course, everybody knows the Darth Vader character, and Yoda and Jabba the Hutt, which was one of my favorite characters. Some of the figures have fallen here, but I did collect a lot of these, the 3, I guess 4-inch figures they called them. We'll let them stay there. But it was just not only the movies were really awesome, but just all the toys during that time were really cool as well.
Well, right now, there's been a resurgence of interest, isn't there, in Star Wars?
With the new movie coming out in later December, there's a huge interest right now in Star Wars. So all the toys are very popular again and everything else. So it's really exciting, and I'm excited about the new movie as well.
But what is that boxy thing there?
I'm sorry. This. Right here? This is the Darth Vader's ship. So this is the
from
TIE,
this
TIE
angle,
fighter.
I didn't recognize it. There it is.
So
right
Darth
there.
Vader's ship that he was flying in, I guess, in the movie and stuff like that. So it is definitely pretty neat. Also, I want to say about the 80s. I don't have all this, I guess, in the right place, but the video games, of course, were big in the 80s. Atari. I have a couple of the old Atari games. This one. I remember I had to wait for, it was Fisher's Big Wheel, I think. You had to put your name on a list for the Pac-Man when that came out. And I was so excited, to get the Pac-Man game, and then played it, of course, and loved it as a kid. But that was huge back then.
and that's when the graphics really became a big thing.
Yep. Yeah, Atari, of course, they had really simple graphics, but it was so much fun to play it as a kid, Even now, like you go back, even the video games now are like like it's real life, you know. It just, the graphics are so incredible. But back then, the games were just so much. They were simple. They were fun. 1984, we had the Nintendo come out, and I have a couple of the old games. Everybody probably remembers the Duck Hunt game. But I also have what was kind of neat when the first system came out. They had a robot that played basically the game with you. So at our opening day, December 12th, I'll actually have this robot working so everybody can see how it worked. But it was only about a year or so that they had this out, and then they discontinued it. So, but it was kind of neat. Basically, the light flashed on the screen, and it would control which way the robot would move, but it would kind of play the game with you, which is kind of neat. So the funniest thing, this was probably early 80s as well, and this is a Star Wars the figure that came with this. But then on the back, we had this was Boba Fett, one of the characters in Star Wars. They originally, when they designed the figure, they had a missile or rocket that shot out of the backpack of Boba Fett, but they never actually produced it because they were afraid that it would, somebody would get injured or whatever. And what's funny today is that everything you buy, like Star Wars or G.I. Joe or whatever, has like firing missiles or, things flying everywhere. So it was funny back then. They thought it was a safety hazard or something. And they actually covered up the little card right here with the black sticker. Instead of printing another card for the figure, they covered it up. So, which is kind of neat. But there's a couple of prototypes out there that are worth thousands of dollars that a few collectors have. But yeah, obviously the music of the '80s was kind of a big thing, and we'll have a display. What we're going to do is kind of guess that song or something like that. We'll have some kind of trivia that we're going to come up with. So yeah, that was the '80s.
Well, I should let our viewers know that we're taping this ahead of time while you're still working on the exhibit.
Yep.
And then they'll be viewing this either online, certainly online, and in the month of January on the regular WCTV TV.
Yeah, and it's basically it'll be up through January 10th. So from December 12th through January 10th is the exhibit. So hopefully they'll be able to come out to the exhibit. I guess the other big thing I forgot about was the the Cabbage Patch doll. So that was in the '80s as well. Like I said, I could talk the whole segment about the '80s. But obviously, a lot of people remember, I think it was like '85 or something like that. I was trying to research that when every kid in America had to have the Cabbage Patch doll, and there were fights that broke out at Christmas time.
it was like Black Friday for a doll.
It was for a doll. And today I think it's maybe a little bit better with all the things that we have, but that are out now. But yeah, it was pretty funny back then.
When did
I believe
SpongeBob SquarePants.
Yeah, maybe the late '90s it started, but definitely like in the 2000s it was big. Kind of a big hit back then, and it still is today. I mean, you can go to Nickelodeon and watch a lot of the cartoons and stuff like that. So
I think a lot of that is because now with the proliferation of shows on cable or on satellite, those old shows are still being shown and being seen, and there are totally new generations who are coming up and enjoying this. So really, your exhibit is one that can be enjoyed by everybody. Age in the family.
Everybody, because it'll start, like I said, 1965 onward, and there's something for everybody at this exhibit, which is kind of neat, and that's the way we're looking at it. We just didn't want to have an exhibit on Star Wars, of course, or just video games. It's just anything from Barbie to movies to music, so something for everybody, basically.
Well, we've talked about a lot of the stuff that you have on the table, but you haven't mentioned the fish on the wall.
Oh, yes, yeah. That was big in I guess the 2000s. I had to look on the date on the back of it, but everybody probably remembers this, and of course, everybody, I think, had one during this time, including me. Of course, I am a fisherman, so I had to definitely have one. And the funny thing is then after the Big Mouth Billy Bass came out, then they had like a singing deer and all these different animals. It was pretty funny.
Singing clocks came out. Every hour was a different bird sound or animal sound.
So there was a lot that came from that. So basically, yeah, into in the 90s. Like I said, that was like 2000 or so. But we're also, and then as you're going around the building, you'll go into the 90s. Basically talking about our park, River Styx Park. It opened in 1996. Allerdale, which was 1992. And this kind of has a cool story to it. It was donated by Stan and Esther Allard, and actually it's one of the best reforestation areas in the state of Ohio. So Stan actually planted trees back in the 1930s at this park, and over his lifetime, we estimate about 100,000 trees he planted. So at this Allerdale Park. So talk about a great reforestation area, just bringing park back to forests and stuff like that. It was definitely pretty neat. We'll have an activity, a skee ball activity that I think they're going to be like seeds that you actually roll into the different holes like in this board, and it's like you'll be planting trees. So we're still kind of working on that. But the 90s also had Where's Waldo? So, which we're making, my coworker actually made a little tiny, like a figure, I guess, of Waldo, and we're gonna have it in a display that people are gonna try to find it. So that's gonna be pretty cool. The phones, we're gonna do like, the records and tapes and CDs. We'll have, the original rotary phone, and to, obviously the smartphone is the latest thing right now.
I imagine you'll have a princess phone or two.
Yes. My favorite was the shoe phone.
Oh, yes.
It was like Sports Illustrated had, this big offer that, you can get this shoe and talk into this shoe, and it was a phone.
That goes back to some of the TV shows at the time.
Yeah, exactly. That was, yep. So it was just.
I think that was
neat.
Get Smart.
I was going to say, I was trying to remember the name of it. Yes, that's pretty funny. But so we'll have a little bit of everything. I mean, of course, the DVDs, came out in the 90s too, and nowadays it's Blu-ray, and so it's amazing how technology changes over the years.
Well, it sounds like this exhibit is going to be so much fun for the whole family.
Yep.
Everybody can enjoy it no matter what age they are. There's something in it for everybody.
Yep.
But this exhibit is ending on, you said, January 10th?
Will be the last day, yep.
And then about a week later, you have another exhibit starting, the photo exhibit.
The nature photo exhibit, where people have entered photos. And I think the deadline is like mid-December, so so by that time, unfortunately, nobody can enter any other photos. But photos taken throughout the year at our different parks. Anybody can enter it, and people will vote for their favorite photo, and we give away prizes for some of the winning photos. But we also have lots of activities in the winter as well, from the sledding. We have lots of different. Allerdale, we just talked about, is a great sledding hill. And that's a great place. A lot of our other parks have places to sled. Cross-country skiing, of course, is popular.
How about winter hiking?
Winter hikes we'll have as well. We have a lot of hiking series that you can come out and hike with us. We used to have snowshoe programs, and a lot of times what would happen is we would schedule it, and then there would be no snow. So, but we have also like an ice fishing workshop that I'll probably help with in January as well. So that's not only learning about ice fishing, but then you'll also get a chance, if the ice is thick enough, to go out and fish on it. So that's going to be a fun program.
Well,
I'm sorry.
Well, I was just thinking that what's so nice about all these activities you have is that they are indoors. You have the indoor activities with the timeline game and the photo exhibit, and you have these wonderful winter outdoor activities as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Not only, we also have like a puppet show that I wanted to mention as well, that obviously is inside. But yeah, we try to have something for everybody. I mean, not only this exhibit, the Blast from the Past exhibit, something for everybody, but all of our programs, usually we have things that several people would be interested in. So
how's the best way for people to find out about your activities?
Basically our website, medinacountyparks.com. If they go to the website, they'll have the calendar in there and all the information about our exhibits and everything else. So that's probably the best place. It's like I said, it lists our calendar with everything in it, and then all of our special events are posted on there as well. So So yeah, we keep we definitely stay busy.
Well, the creativity
Yeah.
that has gone into this and the opportunity for interactivity, I think that really, it's a marvelous opportunity and so
Yep.
different from the way most people do a historical event.
Yep. Yeah, originally, we were thinking, yes, we wanted to include the history of the park, which we are, but then, which is really neat to learn about, but then we wanted to take it a step further and just, what was going on during that time. What was the pop culture like during that time? And there's so much. We could.
Oh, there is so much that we really could go on and on. But our time is running out on this. So thank you, Mark, so much for being with us. And thank you, everyone, for viewing. I hope you have a chance to take advantage of this opportunity to learn about the parks and about the pop culture of the past 50 years. And certainly have a wonderful day and come back and see us again. Thank you.
Since 1971, RSVP has been matching volunteers' talents to community needs. RSVP is affiliated with the Corporation for National and Community Service, a national organization that supports service and volunteering through grant-funded projects. Volunteers organize neighborhood watch programs, tutor children, renovate homes, plant community gardens, assist victims of natural disasters, and serve their communities in many other ways. RSVP offers maximum flexibility and choice to its volunteers as it matches the personal interests and skills of Americans 55 and older with opportunities to serve their communities. If you're interested in adding more meaning to your life and improving the lives of others, please call 330-253-4597, extension 166.